Good evening, and welcome to my house.
Ladies and gentlemen, the recipient of the 2013 Records of Achievement Award, Steven Spielberg.
Well, first of all,
I don't have a wall big enough for that. I'll make one. I'll build a wall.
well, we are so thrilled and excited by this evening, Stephen. We are beside ourselves that you are here, and just wanted to give you a chance to say a few words after everybody's been talking about you for so long.
The first thing I just want to, because I wasn't really prepared to speak except to do this lovely moment with all of you and with Ken tonight, but just to be able to say that and thank you so much for everybody who participated in making this. I didn't see this until, along with you, just these last few minutes. You know, I've always, you know, because of my dad, especially because of my father, Arnold, he instilled in myself a real sense of, number one, patriotism, and number two, an appreciation for my roots, my past, and my ancestry. And along with those lessons came, you know, a great appreciation of the Founding Fathers and what brought us all here today. And I think that history really just asks one thing of all of us. History asks something very, very simple, and that is history is just saying, remember me. That's all it really ever asks, is to remember, you know, the past. But one of the things that I really, you know, tenacious about with my children is to appreciate why you are who you are today, because of who allowed that to happen for you, and that's all about history.
Do you think there's something film brings to the telling of historical stories that, say, a book can't? We're dependent on them, both you and I, but there's something that happens in your films, and I think you see a greater possibility.
Well, not just with my films, but film, to all films that dare to go back to recreate the past, film brings to, you know, the filmmakers a huge urge to be responsible, because often it's the films that kids are going to remember more than the books they read, unfortunately. The films, the whole visual media, especially today, can really take hold, and if there's disinformation, if there's, you know, blatant inaccuracies, not just to create a little drama, but really not telling the truth about anything, you know, films talking about history, unless those films are meticulously researched, can do more harm than good, which is why I think, you know, anything about the past, you know, brings to bear on all of us. People that I rely on, the archive here we relied on. Tony Kushner dipped his pen into the truth that came from this place, this great place. Doris Kearns Goodwin, this resourced here.
What was that moment when you knew you were going to be a filmmaker? That you had to be a filmmaker?
Well, the moment that I first got interested in making movies was, you know, the moment that I think my dad got me my first electrical train set, my first Lionel train, and I used to crash the trains all the time. It was fun to crash the trains into each other. I was about 9, 10 years old, maybe 11, and one day my dad said, if you crash those trains one more time and they break one more time, I'm taking them all away from you. And I remember not knowing what to do because I loved watching him crash, so I took his 8mm movie camera, and I literally filmed the last train crash. And then played the 8mm for myself over and over and over again. And that's when it stuck. That's when I realized, wow, I have a lot of control with this medium. That was the first time.
As you were growing as a filmmaker, who did you love? Who were the directors that inspired you, not just necessarily in the American pantheon, but in this is an international language,
right.
and your films have touched people around the globe, so too you must have been touched by others. Just the sheer fact of the family on the ensemble reminds one of Ingmar Bergman using the same cinematographers, the same actors, film in and film out, and having a kind of repertory sense of, not repetition, but of the glories that can happen there. Who did you love as you came to maturity?
Well, you know, as you know, my first access to any movie was The Greatest Show on Earth by Cecil B. DeMille. My dad took me to that when I was a kid.
Not a bad
and I'd never seen a movie before that, so I became really interested as I grew up in the whole legacy of Cecil B. DeMille, starting in the silent movies. But then I realized that a lot of Cecil B. DeMille's films were more about size and spectacle than about, you know, human, you know, connection and conversation. And I naturally, as I got older, went more toward filmmakers like Truffaut, who were having good conversations between people. Frank Capra, you know, who had a great heart.
Yes.
And I remember I was such a fan of Frank Capra's. And more important than E.T. being a successful movie in theaters was the day Frank Capra saw it and sent me a note. And when I think of E.T., I think of Frank Capra because he sent me a note telling me he liked my picture. You know, and then it's not just those people. I think we're all students of film. You called yourself a student. You know, I'm a student. I'm a student of yours. I'm a student certainly of I'm a student now of Alfonso Cuarón because I love Gravity so much, you know. I'm a student of anybody who blows me away with a movie and makes me realize I don't know enough about filmmaking. And so I think we all learn from each other.
You've made so many extraordinary films, but some of them I would consider sort of perfect. You know, that they're perfect. And some, they're great, but there's something different. I feel that same way about my own films. There are a few that you say, wow, I wouldn't touch that. Do you have that same relationship to your film? I think, for example, E.T., there's not anything wrong with that, forever.
Some of the movies that I'm proudest of are films that a lot of people haven't seen. And some of the movies that I wish I could do parts over again are some of my most popular films. So it's all very personal. It's a very, very personal experience. E.T., to me, there's nothing wrong with E.T. either because E.T. suddenly was the first movie, and I was in my 30s when I made it, and I had no children, I wasn't married, and when I finished directing those kids, I wanted to be a parent so desperately. And so that movie I completely credit for making me want to be a dad, and 3 years later, my first child was born. I have 7 now, but my first was born in 3 years after E.T. So E.T. has a real connection with that part of my personal life.
And when they come out, they look extraterrestrial.
They do. Yes, they do.